If a grain of wheat dies, it produces much fruit. And these words come from today's gospel reading. My friends, there was a carpenter that went to confession one Lent and confessed to stealing a large amount of wood from a local hardware store. The priest, presuming the carpenter was a poor man and making restitution for the theft might cause problems both for him and the hardware concern, gave the man a spiritual penance. He told him, "Go and make the Stations of the Cross." To which the carpenter replied, "Father, if you have the plans, I've got the materials." You know, my friends, we live in a world in which we, as a people of faith, are deeply challenged. And in the confusion of our times, it seems easy to become discouraged. It's easy to lose heart. But I'll offer a small piece of advice. Don't make that mistake. We are called to have a passionate joy rooted in the gospel. Sometimes we feel the weight of our times, and we complain again and again about the darkness of our world and the challenges of our day. But complaining about our times is useless. We are our times. We make the times. And it's up to us to evangelize in gentle and compassionate ways to make our times better. None of us are powerless. As St. Francis of Assisi once said, "Preach the gospel and sometimes use words." We do that through our prayer, through our acts of charity, through our active involvement in our parish communities, and through the regular practice of our faith. We become witnesses to an unseen power that has its own effect upon the soul. In fact, the power of the seemingly powerless resides in the personal refusal to live a lie, to live instead in the truth, whatever the cost. Each of our choices and actions matter. All of us contribute in small but material ways to renewing the character of our times. When the Apostle of Ireland, St. Patrick, went to the Emerald Isles under the direction of Pope Celestine, he brought with him a company of monks and little more. Wherever he went, he bore what little he had, his mitre and crozier, the cross he wore around his neck, and a bell he used to call the people together for the words of evangelization. He used what was at hand to gently evangelize, not a difficult or hard word, but a word of kindness the people could understand and embrace. Patrick used his tools as symbols of the Celtic culture, as simple as the shamrock, to explain the beauty of God's truth. He brought the necessary materials that defined who he was and preached the word God had placed in his heart. Nothing more. That word was enshrined in a sacred song known as the Lorica, or breastplate of St. Patrick, more popularly known as the Deer Song. Christ as a light illumine and guide us. Christ as a shield or shadow and cover us. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ within me. Patrick knew Christ was with him. He knew he was God's material, and he knew God had the plan. He knew that God would use him any way God chose. And the triumph of God's Spirit in him should be obvious to us. For by the time of his death, Patrick had converted not only the people of Ireland, but baptized the whole culture of the land he evangelized. He was God's material, but it was God's plan. There is an old story associated with the beautiful St. Bridget's Rush Cross. St. Bridget, the co-patron of Ireland, along with St. Patrick, was the founder of the monastery at Kildare, built in the shade of an ancient oak, held sacred by the Irish. Kildare became a magnificent place of art and learning, a center for ongoing evangelization. St. Bridget is a person of whom all kinds of legends are told, drying her garments hung on a ray of sunlight, changing bathwater into beer for visitors who came to her door. But the story of the Rush Cross is more significant. Called by servants to a home of an old pagan chieftain who was delirious on his deathbed. His servants hoped that Bridget might calm his restless spirit. And Bridget knelt by his bedside, and rather than attempting to relax and console him with words, she began to pick up the rushes from the floor and weave them into a distinctive cross patterned typical of the Celtic symbol of the sun. And while she weaved, the chieftain became absorbed in what she was doing, began to calm down. He finally asked her what she was creating. And using the cross, Bridget explained the mystery of the incarnation, the meaning of the cross, and the sacrificial nature of Christ's love. And her words brought peace to the chieftain's soul. He was so enamored by her words that the old chieftain requested to be baptized a Christian. And he was fully initiated before he passed. Like the good thief, he stole heaven. Bridget used the material she had at hand and allowed God to do the rest. And since that day, it has been customary on the eve of her feast day, the 1st of February, for the Irish people to fashion a St. Bridget's cross of straw or rushes and place them inside their houses over the door. It has become St. Bridget's emblem, but more importantly, it became a tool that explains God's plan. We, as a diocesan family, are in the midst of the Beacon of Faith campaign. Our hope is to strengthen the parish life in the 4 counties of our diocese. But for all the pragmatic needs of our parishes, our most fundamental need is to bring our people home to God. All of us have family and friends who no longer practice. Since the pandemic, many of our young families have not returned to church. How easy it is for us to become discouraged. But don't. God has a plan, and we are his materials, and God can use you and me, and in our seeming weakness, do great things. As the late Archbishop Fulton Sheehan once wrote, "Dead things float downstream. It takes living souls to resist the tide." Have the courage of faith to resist what in this world leads to spiritual death, knowing that through God's favor, all of us can become alive to God. Today in Holyoke, we march. Each year, the Holyoke St. Patrick's Day Committee is committed to celebrating our heritage by bringing in the spring, in the season of the Irish, with our parade. However, it does so much more. Many of us in the committee who are Catholic call upon the great Celtic saints to sustain us in our faith. We are the children of St. Patrick. We are the children of St. Bridget. We are the children of God. We are his materials by which he transforms the world. And our celebrating on the streets of Holyoke is part of that transformation. By our dying to self, we know the joy of God as we come more and more alive in him. On this day, in the midst of the great Lenten fast, let us celebrate the gift of our Irish heritage, and let us take a lesson for our own spiritual journey from a springtime and gospel truth. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit.